Look at this.
Welcome everybody, thanks for coming. We appreciate you coming to show up. We have a procedural piece of business we have to take care of before we start the choral presentation. So we're going to start with our Truth in Taxation hearing. So to get started, welcome to the Lake Bluff Board of Education, Lake Bluff School District District 65 Board of Education Truth in Taxation hearing for December 16th, 2014. And we need to take a roll call. Julie, could you step in for the roll call? Christine is not here.
Sure. Richard Hay.
Here.
Susan Ryder. Here. John Marizan.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Christine Lettinger. Absent. Julie Gottschall. Present. Lena Charlotte. Present.
So we have,
Good job.
thank you, impromptu. We have 6 out of 7, so we have quorum, so we can begin. The purpose of this meeting is to allow individuals the opportunity to be heard and comment on the proposed 2014 tax levy. And our business official, Mr. Jay Kahn, is going to go through a brief overview of that levy. We've had discussions on this on at least 4 other occasions, and he's going to summarize it for us, and then people have the opportunity to ask questions and comment on it after he's done.
Okay, so as you said, Mark, you've seen all these slides before. This is just kind of a summary of the things we've been discussing to date to come up to decide on the 2014 tax levy. I'm going to go through it pretty briefly, but for the community, I'm going to go through it again for their benefit. So first we're going to talk about the 2014-15 budget, give you a few brief tax levy terms and timeline, go through the tax levy calculation, and then give you the recommendation for 2014. Our 2014-15 budget, that's this year's budget, is balanced. This is just a view of how our budgets have been in the last couple of years, 2012, 2013, 2014, and then this year we're balanced. So my only comment here is that we are at a balanced budget, so our revenues are matching our expenses. So going forward, as we talk about how the taxes are calculated, we will be increasing our taxes by a percentage allowed in order to keep pace with our expenditures. This is just a brief glimpse of how the proportion of how our revenue comes in. As you can see, about 90% of it is local property tax, and that's what we're talking about here tonight. The tax levy, again, tonight you'll be certifying or approving the tax levy. This is the amount that we request to be levied next year. This has to be turned into the county by the last Tuesday in December. There are 231 taxing bodies in the state of Illinois, and we are one. We represent about 40% of the tax bill of a Lake Bluff resident. So the elementary district represents less than half of the taxes that they pay. It's usually levied for the subsequent year, so we're levying now for taxes collected next year, and it's based on a formula. The tax extension is what we actually bill to the taxpayers and what's collected. So tonight is the levy. This is what we're going to ask for, but we won't find out what we're actually going to get or extend until next March. Equalized assessed value is one of the inputs into the calculation. This is basically the total value of all property in the district. We calculate how much money we need, and then it's divided equally among all the property based on its equalized assessed value. So the assessed value is set at 1/3 of the market value of the property. That's the assessed part. And then the equalized part is that each township is equalized, or the state looks at all of the townships, all the counties within, and each county looks at all the townships within, and they apply an equalization factor to make sure that everything's being assessed fairly. If one municipality is assessing their property too high or too low relative to others, they step in and assign an equalization factor to kind of even things out. And then CPI, the Consumer Price Index, this for this year is going to be 1.5%. That is an input into the calculation. And then the calculation, the form of the law is called the Property Tax Extension Limitation Act. This limits the increase in taxes over the prior year, basically to CPI. or the lower of CPI or 5%, and then it also accounts for any new property in the district. A new property would be basically any property that wasn't taxed the previous year. Here's a quick tax cycle timeline. You can see it's pretty long. The CPI that we're using is last year from December 2012 to December 2013. The equalized assessed values are a rolling average of the prior 3 years, so 2011, 2012, and 2013. This kind of smooths out any kind of bumps in assessments. And even though we're asking for the money here, and we're collecting the money next year, it's based on property value as of January 1st, 2014. So any changes that have taken place since then are not incorporated into this year's levy. The final rates will be established in late March, early April, and at this point, any abatements are due. We still have one opportunity to look at what we are by formula allowed to levy, and then we can reduce that. We just can't levy more than we ask for. We can always reduce it if we choose it at some point to abate our debt service or other taxes, and then we collect them in June and September.
Jay, can I ask you to pause for just a second? Do those guys in the hall want to come in? There might be some seats in the back. Yeah, come on in. Yeah, no problem. This is very procedural.
He's only got a couple more slides on it.
Come on in. Come on. We'll get through this part in just a couple of minutes. We're required by law to do this truth and taxation hearing, so it's just something we got to move through. It's okay. Come on in.
Taxes are, as I said, calculated based on the prior year extension. We increased the prior year extension for CPI to get the current year extension and then add new property. The December change, as I said, in CPI was 1.5%. The change from the prior year is 1.7%. I'm a little concerned about next year because the last time we had gas prices where they are today, our CPI was 0. Right now we were running 2% through November. We still have, or through October, we still have 2 months left to go, and we've had a huge decrease in gas prices, so that 2% could be wiped out and could go down to 0. What happened in history was that once gas prices went back up, the next year was 4%. So the average was still 2%, but it went way down and then way up, and if that were to happen, we basically would not be allowed a tax increase over the over the previous year. Equalized assessed property value is actually expected to go up for the first time in a long time, just less than 1%. And our existing property, or our new property, is estimated between $3 and $4 million. So the recommendation is to increase our taxes within the tax limitation law. And I'm just going to skip to the last slide. Our 214 levy recommendation is basically to increase taxes on existing property at 1.5% in line with CPI. We'll get another roughly $100,000 from new property to the district, and then we will automatically levy our debt service extension based on what our payments are due next year for a total tax rate of 2.78% or a 4.3% increase over the prior year. Are there any questions?
The 2.78 is not a percentage.
The 2.78 is the tax rate, so it's $2.78 per $100 of assessed value.
Any questions or comments?
I think we beat that one to death.
Yes. Later in the board meeting, you'll be approving it by fund, and those numbers have been rounded up a little bit to the nearest round number. So it won't add up to exactly 14,125. It's slightly higher than that.
And we also offer the opportunity from anybody in the public who would like to comment or raise questions on the levy to do so, to step forward and ask away.
It's the best attendance I've ever had for a truth and taxation.
I have a feeling that people are not here for that, though. And if there is no interest in addressing the truth and taxation hearing, if there's no further questions or comments, we will end now. And I need to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting at 6:50, the Truth and Taxation hearing at 6:55.
So moved. Second.
Second, and give a roll call to end this meeting.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Hay,
Yes.
Chris Letchinger, yes, John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan White.
Yes.
Okay, so we're adjourned, so let's take a couple minutes to get everybody situated and seated
We're
where
gonna-
you need.
Very quick recess just to get the kids up here and get situated. Kevin, can you go down and get Nate and let him know? Board members, when the kids get up here, we're gonna wanna go out there.
Welcome everybody to the Board of Education, the Lake Bluff District 65 Board of Education meeting for December 16th, 2014. Christine, can we please have a roll call?
Mark Berry,
Present.
Leanne Charlotte,
Present.
Julie Gottschall,
Present.
Richard Hay,
Present.
Christine Letchinger, present, Jen Rosen,
Present.
Susan White.
Present.
I think we're all present and accounted for. Would one of you folks care to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Anybody volunteers? All right, get us going. Flags to the right, to your, there you go. Allegiance. All right. One additional agenda item, and I apologize, I do have to stick to my agenda. We didn't think this through clearly, but we have an opportunity for public comment if somebody would like to address the board. If not, we'll push that along and go right to our recognition of Lake Bluff students and the Encore Chorus. And is Mr. Blackburn going to introduce it now?
Good evening. We've definitely got a full house this evening, and I think they're going to enjoy the performance. This is our encore group, Miss C. We have approximately how many singers this evening?
About 55.
About 55. So enjoy their performance. Happy holidays to everybody who's watching at home. Thank you. Nice job, everybody. Outstanding job. We had a little bit of a technical challenge with the next song, so we're going to wrap it up right there. Thank you very, very much for coming. You want me- visitors are filing out, I thought I'd give Miss C just an opportunity to explain a little bit about the song that you just heard. I already had a few questions, so I'll turn things over to Miss C and she can explain a little bit more.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Oh.
It was under like 55 coats down there, and I just couldn't find it. And I apologize. And it was the killer version of Death the Hall. Are they still down there?
Thank you.
Oh, nuts.
They did a great job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So Encore, as most of you know, is a group of 7th and 8th graders. It's an audition group, and they rehearse before school 2 mornings a week. And that particular piece is called Balilaka, and it's a contemporary Indian piece, and from the Tamil dialect. And so we started working on that. We did a camp just before school started because it was quite an undertaking with the language and the vocal parts. So all around it was quite challenging, but the kids really liked the piece. And it's gotten a hilarious video on YouTube because it is a contemporary piece that they play like on the radio in India. So the kids have had a ball with that piece, and so we did that for our festival at the high school at the end of October, and we thought it'd be a great way to show you some of the diversity that we do in our choral program at the middle school. So I apologize for not having 2 songs for you tonight, but thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. And do you have any other questions?
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Concert was great too. At the middle school, great concert.
It was
So I
a
can
great
vouch for
concert.
Deck the Halls. It wasn't.
Oh.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Thank you again. Thank you. Have a great holiday season and Happy New Year.
It was great.
Since we rushed through the preliminary opportunity for public comment, I just want to make sure that there's nobody who felt intimidated by the crowd, who didn't want to comment on the taxation hearing or wanted to offer comment to the board, that if they wanted to do so, please feel free. If not, we'll move on with our agenda and go right to item 7, which begins with our Lake Bluff Elementary School and Principal St. Clair.
Actually, both of our principals are going to have no reports tonight.
She's looking at me like I was crazy. No, never mind. I'll follow the other agenda that tells me all that information.
To you. You're the next
Yeah.
one.
So moving on to the President's report, and mine is very brief, really brief. I know I've said that before and it wasn't so brief, but really brief. Last time we spoke, I spoke a lot about the NSSED and our decision to whether or not we submitted a letter of intent to withdraw this year or wait and do some further study. And we were concerned about what District 67 and 115 would choose to do. Jean and Kevin and I attended a joint meeting of District 67 and 115 2 weeks ago, something like that. At which time, at the end of the meeting, they voted to postpone their decision to submit a letter of withdrawal to NSSED and are going to work with us over the course of the next year to make a decision and evaluate it in a very thoughtful and planful manner, beginning with the presentation to the Tri Board by Kevin and Ingrid over at 67 to present a state of the situation for us. So I know we were all a little bit concerned about missing the boat if we didn't submit at the same time. They decided to postpone as well, so I think that's good news. Then the other update I wanted to give you was NSSED had proposed a new pricing structure which would benefit us very marginally. Bigger districts benefit more than smaller districts. And we had decided, along with District 67 and 115, to make a statement prior to the vote to encourage them to reconsider introducing that pricing model and to step back and think of more of a pay-as-you-go type of model. We even tried to put forth a motion to table that particular new pricing structure vote for 90 days pending further study, but that got voted down. And the motion ultimately passed, so the NSSED has a new pricing structure which does benefit us a little bit right now, but in the long run we believe that it still needs work. So we tried to motivate enough of the 18 members in the district to encourage administration to rethink that proposition. At the moment that didn't work, but we will revisit that soon. So that's my NSSED update. If anybody has any questions, be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to our superintendent's report. Nothing?
Which is very brief. I just want to remind everyone we are in the season of snow days. And even though it did not feel like that today, although I've heard when we go back outside it will feel winter again. I want to remind everybody that we really cover an extensive process for calling snow days. I'm up all night prior to snow days, checking in with superintendents along the North Shore. We have built days within our schedule this year. So I know President's Day is one of them, that if we had to call a snow day in January, everyone would be at work and the kids would go to school on President's Day. It's right on the calendar. If we don't have any snow days, because we're not going to have any this year, then everybody can have President's Day off. So just know that we have an extensive communication process. School Messenger will supply emails, text messages, phone calls. We post it on the website. The kids shout it from the mountaintops, so we get the word around pretty quickly. But it is a very serious call, because our kids' safety and our staff safety is always very important to us. But please take note and stay tuned. I'm hoping we don't have to consider too many days this year. I don't think we'll have any, but the consideration piece, I can't guarantee you on how many days. So that concludes my report.
Okay, and then we're going to move to
Presentation.
yeah, but I wanted to make sure we skip this.
Oh, okay.
I want to make sure we hit everything, because to be honest with you, I'm a little confused sometimes when I get these motion pages. I think we need to revisit that, because that's why I'm stumbling on this a little bit. Item 5, we passed over, and I don't want to pass that, because we made a commitment to keeping this alive. And I want to present the opportunity to the board to ask questions or suggest a topic for discussion or a future agenda item in the future. And I want to make sure if anybody wants to raise something that they think should be on an agenda in the future, that is something we should do so now.
I have a couple things. One, we had talked about doing a more in-depth conversation about enrollment. And I thought that was going to happen in November or December. I just want to make sure we don't lose that.
We have not lost that. We have actually sat down with data on numerous occasions. We're not done yet. We just don't have the time to devote to it. We're getting there. The verification of data has been very tough for us. So we're really looking at more of a February date at this point.
Okay, well, I would like to suggest that we're going to talk about this calendar too. It needs to happen, I understand what you're saying, because the measurements were taken at different times, and that created some problems for this past stuff. But in the future, I do think it's important for us to touch on that again, like in October. Because typically
What
we
are
take
we
a look
referring
at,
to? Exactly.
well,
Because we may
enrollment
not
numbers.
be talking about, the enrollment numbers were in your packet the month after we talked
I
about
got it, and we said there was going to be a more in-depth conversation about
Right.
the enrollment trend. So
And what
we need to have that conversation, but we also should be planning on having a conversation about enrollment every year, like in October, because we need to be checking back to see how the class sizes worked out and just the trend of the numbers every year.
And without getting into a whole lot of detail, we had to go back and verify some data, and we had pieces missing.
Mm-hmm.
So we are almost done with that project, but we start looking at enrollment again itself in January with staffing. So we'll be tying it into a couple different areas.
Well, so I guess we're saying it needs to be on the agenda more than once a year,
Absolutely,
probably 2 or 3 times a year.
at least.
Because here we have it on for August, and you're saying we'll talk about the general thing in February, but there needs to be a fall conversation too.
And the in-depth analysis of enrollment trends over many years is something that John and myself and Jay and Jean met and discussed where they were probably 3 weeks ago, to get a preliminary sense of the issues they're facing with trying to reconcile all the data and data from different sources and different results.
Right.
So that's an ongoing process, and John and I did take a look at it and gave them some suggestions to how to streamline it going forward. So we're hoping to bring that to back in the new year. I don't know where we left off, but it could have been a little later, February maybe, that we were going to talk about that. But that's definitely not being forgotten.
Okay. And it relates to my second agenda item that I want to recommend we talk about, which is the Stonebridge development. I think it'd be good for us to sort of have an update as a board on how that's progressing, and also to talk about kind of what the implications are for the school. And that, involves that enrollment number conversation too. So I'd like to see that hopefully sooner than later.
You may have difficulty with this because it's still in front of the village and it's not been officially approved. So you may be giving the impression that you're forcing the village board's hand on this, so you have to be careful.
Oh, I wouldn't imagine forcing the village board's hand on anything. My request is for us to understand what's happening because there's a potential for a significant change in the number of kids we have, and there's some financial issues involved. I just think we need to be prepared and understand as it's progressing. So, and it may even be that somebody from the village board wants to come in and talk to us, or staff in the village. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but I just was interested in us having some conversation.
I've got both of them. And I know for a fact enrollment will be discussed because we're already talking about staffing, and that's tied into that. And we'll touch base and figure out when we can get the update for Stonebridge here, because it's been a couple months since we talked about that. So,
Mark alluded to was we're looking at enrollment figures and staffing figures that go back a number of years, so we can correlate those and make sure we have numbers that we can rely on going into the future, and take a look at our cost per student, that sort of thing.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I had one item a few weeks ago. We discussed the necessity to have an open discussion regarding contingencies in our budgets.
There you go.
Emily raised that at one of our meetings, and I think it's worth defining that a little more clearly and having an open discussion with regard to how we budget.
I agree.
So Terry, if you could do me a favor and put down enrollment/staffing and the contingency discussion on the committee of the whole meetings in January. And I'm going to see what I put down Stonebridge, but I've got to see what I can find out there.
Okay.
Got it?
Anybody else? I appreciate the input. Now, I apologize for going all over the agenda here, but I got a little confused, and I think I'm back on track. So we're going to move on to item 8, item 8A, which is school improvement / district improvement plans. And a team from the elementary school and the middle school will share presentations with the board on the goals for the year based on data from ISAT and MAP scores.
And what we have here is they're getting ready to come up and the presentation gets loaded. I'm not sure whose computer. Okay. You've heard about our scores, and we've done an analysis of comparables. And at this point, and next year we're going to start doing this in November. We're just a little bit behind with everything this year. We have our teachers coming in that are actually telling you, based upon the data that you've already heard about, what are we doing? What are our goals for the year? And what are some things that our staff is working on with our kids?
So I'm actually just going to start from here, and then I'm going to turn it over to the two teams of teachers and administrators to present. So as Dr. Sophie said, you guys have heard much of this information before. In September and November, I gave you a presentation about our performance at ISAT and MAP. Earlier in the school year, ECRA, our data partners, members of the administrative team met to set personal goals as a part of the administrator evaluations. And then school improvement teams in both buildings convened to discuss the needs of their buildings based on past performance and on the work that had been done as a part of the Rising Star teams. So you'll hear a little bit about that tonight. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to the team from Lake Bluff Elementary School.
It's hard to follow the choral group, the encore group. We are not going to sing or dance tonight, but we are happy to be here. I first want to introduce some of our representatives from our school improvement team. I have Sam Winston, a third grade teacher, Katie Rinswaller, first grade teacher, Kim Novak, a special education teacher, and Tracy Burke, our assistant principal. So what we did was when we talk about last year, our Rising Star team, they worked together on a state-initiated school improvement plan, which identified a multitude of indicators for improvement. And so our team looked at all the indicators, and they kind of prioritized 3 areas where they saw a need and some commonalities. And those were professional development, curriculum development, and to solidify staffing and leadership. So you will see when we talk about our goals that we have kind of divided up what we're doing this year into those three categories: professional development, curriculum development, and staffing and leadership. So this year then, our school improvement team, we took that work that the Rising Star team had done because they really worked lots of hours last year looking at all that information and took those same priorities and identified then what we could do this year to meet our goals. So we identified the things that we're doing in those three areas and then set up times to meet throughout the year to review our data. We're really fortunate to be working with ECRA so that they can take all of our assessment data and give us a lot of really nice information about student growth.
Okay, so first we're going to talk about English and language arts. For Lake Bluff Elementary, students at Lake Bluff Elementary School will show positive growth in the area of reading as measured by ECRA's value growth scores. So there's a couple pictures up there. The two pictures on either side are pictures of my students reading some informational books that they wrote. They took a lot of what we talked about in our reading class about nonfiction text features, different text structures, and were able to apply it to their own writing. And here they are presenting it to their peers, which was really fun to see.
What grade is that?
Third. So these are the things that we've identified that we are already doing at Lake Bluff Elementary School, and they're divided into those three areas: professional development, curriculum, and staffing. The one that we wanted to highlight today was reading and writing across the curriculum. So that goes back to, it's not just reading class, writing class, science class, but it's all blended together. Kids are writing during science, they're reading during social studies, and really teaching across the curriculum so it's not so separate and it's more incorporated throughout the day.
And similar in math to reading, students at Lake Bluff Elementary School will show positive growth in the area of math as measured by ECRA's value growth scores. And these pictures are of students in first grade, and the one on the left is a problems and investigations session where they're working whole group together, and then they take what they have learned in those lessons and apply it in either independence or partner groups or in small groups during their workplaces. And then here we have our three areas we're working on with professional development, curriculum, and staffing, and we wanted to focus on different opportunities that we have had this year as teachers under professional development. Teachers have been able to go into other teachers' classrooms and watch them teach lessons in math, and we were able to teach with or watch our math consultant, Janice Heigl, and then be able to reflect upon that afterwards.
And in the area of social emotional learning, our goal is to implement the SEL standards in whole class, small groups, and individual settings. Our school social workers are the primary providers of the SEL curriculum, and classroom teachers supplement the SEL standards in all subject areas. And here we see a picture of our newly hired social worker who works with our pre-K through second grade, and here she's working with the second grade class on a specific directed curriculum of where they're working on feelings and how to address feelings and emotions.
And understanding happy and sad faces.
And here again, for the social emotional learning, we broke it down into our areas identified as needed for professional development, curriculum, and staffing. And the areas I want to focus on are the Capturing Kids' Heart training, which was a wonderful benefit to our whole staff, that we had the opportunity to participate in that program for the training a few days before school started for 3 days. It gave a wonderful opportunity for our new staff to integrate with our current staff, and then it's a program that we continue with daily within our classrooms. And then also to focus on our additional social worker who we saw in our previous picture, and how by having the opportunity to have her working with us, and that since she's been hired, that between she and our former social worker, Jen Proas-Glassman, that the individualized programs can be taught within the classrooms for a specific direct learning of social emotional learning.
So the teachers at Lake Bluff Elementary School also have an emotional wellness goal, and this is to maintain the positive climate and culture as measured by the Eklund Consulting School Workplace Satisfaction Survey. You can see in the picture here we have Todd Battaglia leading a focus group of faculty members who were digging deeper into that staff survey. And we have our timeline here that talks about kind of step by step what we are working on with Nate Eklund's consulting group. So we started with that staff survey. We had Nate come out and meet with our staff to explain some of the results. Todd came in to dig deeper into that survey, and then we'll be determining some target areas where we can implement some new strategies within the school to increase that positive climate and culture in the school.
Before the middle school gets up, I do, because I'm trying to point out mandates as they come along. This Rising Star team that both schools had, that they met weekly last year for at least a half hour, right? That was a mandate from the state of Illinois, because if you did not make AYP, you had to use this Rising Star program, which was days of training. I know because I think Kim went with us, along with many of the other teachers who were there. I think it was somewhat painful training too, but that's just my wording. It was a mandate that was somewhat time-consuming, but I think that our staff learned a lot from it. Now that the waiver is, we have a waiver and we no longer have NCLB in our state, we now have moved to school improvement plans, which I think they've used their expertise that they really became last year in the meetings that they had every week. And now we're able to really synthesize and come up with just big area goals, which makes it a lot more time consuming, or a lot less time consuming and a lot more productive, I think, in your conversations. So it's a great example of a mandate that had a cost, because we had to pay for teachers to meet every week to do that. So
Just a quick question. The consulting group, was that Todd Battaglia used to work at the middle school?
Yeah.
And he now works for them?
He now works for
Oh, that's interesting. Come full circle, right?
And it can be confusing. We had obviously Nate Blackmer, but then Nate Eklund, and sometimes it just comes out Nate, and so we end up getting our wires crossed. But not to be confused, two different Nates.
And one Todd.
And one Todd.
but there's only one Nate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Sophie. You did steal a fair amount of my first slide with that piece.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. No, you said it very well. As Dr. Sophie said, we are in the midst of shifting a bit from the Rising Star to a different school improvement model at the middle school. And I did ask two of our Rising Star leaders to be here tonight to summarize some of the work, and boy, there was a lot, as you said, Dr. Sophie. It was a tremendous amount of work that was done, and both Heidi Bailey and Kathleen Turner did an outstanding job with it. So they're going to take the next few slides and give you a little bit of the history of the work that they went through last year. The rest of our team is also the team facilitators that we meet with every Thursday morning, so that's when the majority of this work was done. And so, am I turning things over to Heidi first? Okay, turn things over to Heidi Bailey.
I think you've heard some of this already, but Rising Star, we used it last year, and it was a statewide tool used to help schools create school improvement plans. The Rising Star team was Nate Blackmer and the team facilitators, so we had Maureen Hominick, Brian Young, Heather Comack, and then we also had Adrian Olmstead, Kathleen Turner, Angela McNicholas, and myself. We would meet weekly to assess indicators that the state had identified as being key components of successful schools. We would assess, I think we covered about 50 indicators altogether, and we would rate them according to their current level of implementation, the priority within our building, and the opportunity to make an impact on that indicator in our building. And we narrowed it down to 3 indicators altogether.
So up on the board, you'll see the 3 indicators that we as a team decided were to be our main focus as a school improvement team. And even though Rising Star has come and gone, we still feel these are very representative of things that we need to work on in our school. One being that the teachers will use document to guide their assessments, instruction, and curriculum. And we have our team still working on that. Having a central database where all of our information is stored. We have several different databases that we use, and we're working on getting everyone trained on how to use them so that there's access to information for people that need it. And then the final one would be the environment of the school. As you know, we have a lovely, lovely building that's just a little bit outdated, so we're working on that, but we're also continuing to work on the social and emotional aspect in our building.
So what you'll also notice is some similar goals to the elementary building. And so in this area of English and Language Arts, students at Lake Bluff Middle School will show positive growth in the area of reading as measured by the ECRA's value growth score. So we're using the same measure for growth as we're using in the elementary building for our language arts and English. Here's a list of some of the ways in which we're going about addressing that and trying to maintain those high scores. I believe on the next slide we may even have a picture of Dr. Rubenstein doing some work with our...
I was going to say, I think that was covered on the list.
Pardon me, it was on the last slide from over the summer, okay.
Can we go back?
It doesn't have a back button, no. All right, we move on to math then. So here's two pictures actually taken from the Math Academy. One of the quotes from a student that I particularly enjoyed, we made sure to include. I can get the answer abstractly, but when I do the concrete, it helps me understand why my answer makes sense. Thank you, Trevor. I think it was a great comment to put up there. But our math goal is also going to be measured by ECRA's growth model. And so there are the ways in which we're going about addressing those areas. Janice Heigl was mentioned by the elementary school. She is also working with the middle school. She has been with us all through the implementation of the Agile Mind curriculum, and we're just thrilled to continue to be able to work with her. Our math scores were very strong this year, as you know, so we attribute a lot of that to Janice Heigl's work with us, as well as that new math curriculum. Student engagement and social emotional learning. I believe there was some discussion at a previous board meeting about the 5 Essentials survey. We'll be doing that again this year. And this goal focuses on some of the feedback we got from that 5 Essentials survey last year, specifically from our students. Students at Lake Bluff Middle School, we asked high-level and challenging questions in class and on test as measured by the 5 Essentials survey. The idea being that the students, at least in the survey before, while we scored quite high, it wasn't as high as we scored in many of the other areas measured on the 5 Essentials survey. So that's something we wanted to spend some time focusing on and making sure that we were addressing for students. I believe those students pictured there are actually doing some brainstorming and some work as they prepared for their Project Citizen hearings at the end of last year. If I remember correctly, it was a spirited debate with lots of drawing on the dry erase board, but in the end it was a very valuable experience for those kids involved. So here's a few of those ways in which we're going about addressing the emotional learning piece. There we go, thank you. And thought it appropriate that we include a picture of the middle school staff, since we also have a staff goal here. Teachers at Lake Bluff Middle School will maintain a positive climate and culture as measured by ECLIN's Consulting School Workplace Satisfaction Survey. That is last year's holiday sweater picture. I anticipate a new one coming out here this Friday. And then also a picture taken from some of the work that was done over the summer, the Capturing Kids' Hard Work workshop that was done, and I know that was also mentioned as part of the elementary presentation as well.
I have a question, and I don't know who to direct it to, so I'll just throw it out there. Much of the measurement of goals is by ECRA's model. Have we asked the questions of ECRA, how does their model hold up, or how do they plan to account for the lack of the ISAT test next year and the introduction of the PARC test? We don't have the history. We're losing the history of one, or we're losing the forward progress on one and have no history on the other. Are we able to continue using that model in a way that you and you guys are comfortable with?
We are able to continue using that model because of the fact that ECRA's model is based much for each individual student, so they can project that out similarly for a park assessment for whatever other assessments we put into the database. So absolutely, ECRA has been working with us on that for a while now on how the park data will fit into all of this.
Okay.
So in theory, they could be using different assessments each year to define their ECRA growth.
Theoretically, that's not considered a best practice in education to use multiple different measures, but over multiple different years. But with the introduction of the park assessment this year, it's something that they are going to have to do not only for our district but for every district that they work with. So.
As long as you're asking the critical questions and you're comfortable with it, I'm okay with it.
How many different standards are there besides ECRA? How many different measuring standards are there?
ECRA's just the company that measures.
I know. Okay.
They aggregate the data.
They aggregate.
They work with us to take in all of our data from Power School and student assessments on MAP and STAR and ISAT and PARC and whatever other data we give to them, and aggregate it and do projections and forecast, and then measure where students are versus where they should have been, or what have you, each time that we do those assessments.
What John might have been asking, I think, is how many assessments do we have that we measured that ECRA looks at?
We kept referring to the ECRA standard, and I thought that was
Right.
the standard.
But the methodology would be the same whether it's ECRA or somebody else?
Yeah.
That's the question.
No, they have a proprietary model, right?
Yeah, I think that what they were referring to in the presentation is that ECRA has a proprietary model that they have used in all of their districts to measure student growth, and have their own secret value-added database that they have utilized for years and continue to add information to that.
So they measure our place on that by looking at how our students perform on several different assessments, and
Absolutely. Yes.
I guess if we're if we're hanging our hat on that and we're saying this is how we're going to measure whether we're making a difference or not, it would be good to know that it'd be standardized somehow. We weren't gonna, we don't like the stats on this one, so we'll just change the formula a little bit.
This is the only way we can standardize with all the changes in assessment.
Yeah.
So districts that are not using ECRA are really struggling because with ISAT going away, they may have MAP or something similar. We're all in a big state of flux right now with assessment. And actually, we just talked about it today at admin team. Kevin will be presenting to you on assessment because you're going to be hearing a lot about PARC and a lot about testing and a lot about how many days we're testing. And this is the year that we have to wait it out to see what PARC's going to bring us. And we're going to have to make some decisions on if PARC truly gives us the data that we need, then maybe we can eliminate MAP or eliminate STAR or eliminate something. But there is so much assessment on the horizon, and as I've shared with you last week, I found out about a new kindergarten assessment. They just keep throwing them out, and I think that the big part's going to be looking at what's mandated, what are we getting from the data, what's the purpose, and then putting together a plan based on that. Right now, PARC is mandated, so we'll see what kind of data they have, and Kevin will present on that for us later on.
And assuming that the new state education team chooses to have us continue to pursue PARC as our assessment tool, right? I mean,
right now it's federal because
that's a federal level? Oh,
unless and until they reauthorize ESEA or federal law, if they reauthorize that and it says you don't have to have a mandatory state test, then we're going to be in a different
That's
place.
a primary driver in the assessment. If you look back at sort of school history, when No Child Left Behind Act was passed, requiring states to assess students every year in grades 3 through 12, or 3 through 8, and then at least once in high school. That is when all of the state assessment pieces picked up. That's when MAP really started to grow as an assessment body. That's when all of these other assessments started to really pick up. So if the federal law were to change, as there is talk, there was an article today in a publication talking about the possibility that the federal government may eliminate that responsibility of states to test every student, and it would be a state or local decision. And so until that changes, we're under the ban.
Anybody else? Questions?
You guys did a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Thank you for
I
coming.
appreciate you coming in. All right, we're going to move on to item 9, the board planning calendar. Dr. Sophie will review with the board future items that need the board's attention.
As I stated at the last meeting, I'm just going to bring this at every regular meeting. So on top of the things that we already discussed, we're going to be talking about things next month such as student fees, building use fees. We're going to start talking about staffing, approving the parent-student handbook, and start talking about my evaluation. One of the things that Terry Simon and I are going to be working on with Terry Hodges is the review of closed sessions and destroying minutes so that we can get on a routine for that next year. So you can take a look ahead and see what's in January. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions, anybody? So now we're going to move right on to discussion with action with discussion. And item 10, and start with our white services fee proposal. Mr. Craig Sipka, is that how to pronounce that? Is our architect from White, and will address the board to share information obtained from the community engagement meetings held in November and discuss future meetings and plans. The board will then be asked to approve the first phase of the possible renovation process of LBMS, which is the community engagement planning and design stage. Mr. Sipka.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Guests, thank you very much for having me back today. Really appreciate you coming here. And Jay, unlike you, who packs a house, I tend to clear it out. So still happy to be here. Tonight, wanted to give you a brief presentation in the spirit of briefness. And just give you a little update on what we are doing in conjunction with the Educational Alignment Study over at Lake Bluff Middle School. About midway through November, we convened a group of interested community members over at the school for an evening session aimed at implementing and encouraging discussion with regards to expectations, needs, wants, and desires with regards to the educational experience over at the school, specifically with regards to facilities. The slide that you see up in front of you over here is really a derivation of the agenda that we presented initially to all the people that did participate. We had about 25, between 25 and 30 people come on out, which was a fairly decent number. I know there was a number of individuals that had conflicts that evening. And over the course of this process, we are going to be re-engaging them and encouraging their participation so that we can fold their comments into whatever recommendations come out of the entire process. So going back to the slide over here, can we just go back real quick?
Craig, can I just comment too that
Yes.
that team was invited by Dr. Sophie to specifically reflect a whole varied spectrum of opinions
Very
and demographics across the entire community. So we didn't try to handpick any particular group of people. We tried to represent as many groups of people as we could get involved in the process.
So noted, good point. Yeah. So we started the evening off with some brief introductions. We introduced ourselves as the architects to give everybody a little familiarity with our firm, with one of my colleagues and myself. And then we had a series of activities, about 4 activities, interspersed between each one of those activities, a combination of videos, some brief presentations on our part and so forth. But all of this was aimed at stimulating thought and discussion amongst participants with regards to the goals at hand. So after the introductions, we opened it up for the first activity, which we're calling opening comments from participants, but really it was to find out and hear them articulate what they thought of their school, their community, and so forth. In part, it was a little bit of a fact-finding mission just for ourselves too, but also kind of an icebreaker to get people warmed up as far as conversations. We followed that up with a summary, if you will, of the facility reports that were conducted over the last couple of years by the district, from BLDD as well as the plant moran studies. I digested those, summarized them for those folks there that had no knowledge or limited knowledge of the contents of those reports. And then we went back to a second activity, which started asking the participants about theirs and their students' experiences and expectations as far as the facility goes. They kind of go hand in hand with a look-see at the report. We came back after that with some observations of our own that we were able to glean from a couple of tours and walkthroughs that we had at the facility. And the research that we had done based on the reports and so forth. I'm going to share some of that with you in just a moment. But activities 3 and 4 then were followed up. Activities 3 and 4 followed our observations. And again, it really centered on activity number 3. We played a video that was a YouTube video presented by a child. And it was really that child's interpretation of what makes kids happy. Trying to move that into a question and answer kind of conversation with the participants, and then we followed that up with priorities that they had kind of moving forward for their facility. And then lastly, another detailed slide that I will have for you a little bit later, reviewing of the next steps so that you understand where we're going in the future with this study and where we hopefully it winds up. So with that, the next slide was really our initial thoughts about the facility. As I said, we had the opportunity both during the interviewing process and after to go through the facility, talk to some staff and administration members with regards to their perceptions, thoughts, needs, desires, and wants with regards to the educational environment. Things that we observe are main entry, access, and security issues. And not that the building is unsafe, but there are some ADA concerns initially at the front of the building. And while you do have the ability to get buzzed in and so forth, I think there's better opportunities and so forth for us to consider and look at in the future with regards to visitors coming into the building after the kids are safely into the facility. The media center configuration, we'll come back to that a little bit later. Flexibility of the learning environment was something that we see a lot of. Things that are being considered across the board in other facilities that probably could find a more disciplined home here. Space for large group instruction, or absence thereof. Efficiency of multi-level facility is something that we would question with regards to the usage, the day-to-day usage by the students and the staff. The lower level learning environments. Had a lot of conversations. Heights of spaces, adequacy for the functions that they house, even some structural and environmental issues with leakage and so forth. And the art room, that was something that was stressed to us as a huge concern, rightly so, by the staff. Dedicated support spaces, something that's gaining a lot more traction. The buildings were built buildings of this vintage were built for a different kind of educational experience for students, and many different functions than we need them for now. And so trying to find a new configuration and a way of accommodating some of the enrichment programs, the special needs and so forth that the students require now is really a trick and a challenge that a lot of school districts are facing. You are no exception. And then the availability of outdoor learning opportunities. You are blessed with a lot of available land around that building, and being able to take advantage of that in some capacity for the students and the staff might be something worth considering. There we go. So that brings us to, just very quickly, I'd like to summarize some of the activities and the information that we gleaned from those the questionnaires that we presented to the participants, things that we heard them say. We did ask in activity number 1 about the unique qualities, what they thought about their facility. Time and time again, we heard a lot of, and even in writing, when we did collect some of the handouts that we distributed, the idea of community pride and the intimate scale, the hominess of the facility and how everyone feels welcome, both students, staff, great family involvement, and that all translates to a neighborhood school. It's something that we need to be cognizant of as we move forward with the process and whatever recommendations that we make to you for consideration for improvement to that facility. The other thing was respect for the environment too, and not only just the internal environment, but this came up many times during the conversation, but the exterior environment. So by that we're meaning sustainability, the importance of the outdoors to your community. I think that's emblematic of the LEED certification that you have at your elementary school, and it would be nice to find a greater synergy with that kind of thinking in your middle school. Activity number 2 was really about perceptions and experiences, both of the students and the families, and kind of going hand in hand with activity number 1. Really, it was the character of the students, the quality of the instructional staff, and the connectivity with the environment again was a thing that was highlighted in some of the information that we collected. Going to activity number 3 and 4 on the next slide. That was the Happy Kids video, and considering child-centric environments, the idea of choice, independence, and learning can happen anywhere in the building, fostered by technology, and which also goes hand in hand with reconsidering the usage of some of the spaces. And that really centers around the Library Media Center, which we have a lot of experience with in a number of school districts. And continue to have conversations with a lot of school districts about, as well as STEM or maker spaces, science labs, and so forth. All functional changes that are occurring thanks to technology and the shift in curriculum and focus of test scores and so forth. Activity number 4 was about priorities and taking everything that we had talked about, uncovered, and learned during the course of that evening. We asked participants to prioritize, and we were a little bit all over the board on that, I guess, if you might say. But I was able to extract a few key elements and ideas that we need to be aware of as we move forward. And that is the flexibility of the learning environment. The reinvention of the Library Media Center. I think we had 3 groups participating, and we broke off into 3 groups. All 3 groups listed those 2 as one of their highest priorities. Sufficient and appropriate space for music and band. I think that's really a response to the lower level choir room that you have over at the school. Some of the tight quarters that you have for those functions. They did a wonderful job. But this is probably about twice the size of what they have down there right now. So in terms of height. Support space for science and curriculum also, again, going hand in hand with what I was saying previously about the Library Media Center and STEM spaces. So it's a good start, but as we get get into some of the next stages of the overall process, the conversations will continue. So right now we have scheduled, and not even tentatively, we do have definitively scheduled, and I confirmed today with the Aptekissic School District as well, that we will be taking the group on a day-long tour of some facilities that we have completed in the recent past, starting off with School District 62 in Des Plaines, to see a number of spaces and some of the ideas that were brought up during the course of the evening. So we'll see some of those schools. I think about 3 schools we have targeted right now over there.
We're going to wind up at Lake Forest High School.
And then we're going to go to Aptekissic on the way back to check out a library media center over there, and wind up then over at Lake Forest to see where your kids are going to be at, be graduating to. So that'll give us a nice framework for the conversations that will follow. Concurrently with the site visits, probably sometime in January and moving into February, we'll be hopefully conducting a life safety survey at the school. That is required by the Regional Office of Education in the state of Illinois. That is one of the proposals that we have before you tonight.
Actually, that is not one of the proposals.
Oh, okay.
So,
it was for the educational environment study. I'm sorry. And the summary of then what we'll do is we'll take that information, summarize it, and start developing and looking at scenarios, either for reorganization of spaces, expansion, organization of the facility over at LBMS. If so based on what we hear and what we see. We intend on going back to the community for a second workshop. The date has yet to be scheduled, and that's all going to really be based on availability of participants. We'd like to get as many people now involved in that process. And hopefully we could, although it's unrealistic to assume that we can work around everybody's schedule, we'll certainly try to get the most people available to get together and share information. At that point, we'll review our priorities, and that's going to be happening while we do the site visits as well. We're going to continue that conversation. We don't want that to die. We'll also be presenting some potential solutions and scenarios for them to consider, and ask their guidance in terms of narrowing down those options, ultimately making our way to refining them, and then presenting some scenarios for your consideration in March or April. And I kind of left it a little loose there right now, simply because we need to have some thoughts on the schedule. We'll work through that and kind of tighten up those dates as we get into the new year.
Did that group
I have right now.
Did that group tour the middle school with you guys?
They did with us last year.
Okay.
The majority of them were on this committee with us, and we took an extensive tour last year of that building. There probably are a few people that haven't toured. We should probably consider getting that in. But the majority went last year when we were doing it.
The 2 handouts that you have before you, one is this presentation. So it's some light reading tonight. The other one is really the presentation that would be at the community facility meeting. I just thought it would be valuable for you to see what everybody else was saying. So I'd be happy to answer whatever questions that you might have.
Any questions for Craig?
A lot more information coming in the future, though, for sure.
We satisfied with participation we got?
We were pleased with the people that came. They all participated. Got some really nice feedback and got some real good dialogue going. But it's never complete and it's never enough. Partly it was to stir conversation, to get people thinking about their school, maybe in a different way than they haven't. But really and selfishly, it was about us trying to get information from them so that we get a better handle on our understanding of what your community thinks of your school and where it wants to go with them. So it was a good start, good first step. But we have a ways to go. Definitely have a ways to go.
I was going to ask if Craig or Jean or whoever it's appropriate could elaborate a little bit more on exactly the motion. We're going to be voting on phase 1 of the renovation process, and I wonder if you guys could detail for the board exactly what that really means to us.
Okay.
You want to talk through what we
Sure.
things that go into that?
Yep, and what you have before you is what we're calling the Educational Alignment Study for LBMS. It is a first, initial step with regards to defining some of the challenges that you face in the school and possible improvement scenarios. Actually, what you see over there as far as the next steps are outlined in a little bit more detail and far more eloquently than I did verbally in writing. And it kind of takes you through each one of the steps in the processes and what's involved in each one. So that's part of the understanding portion. We follow that up with, understanding, and then there was the schedule and then the cost associated with that. We're right on track for what we anticipate as far as developing a conceptual model for you. It doesn't tie you down to anything, but it does end with us making recommendations for you to consider as you move forward. It's more or less a conceptual study that tries to tie in all the information that you've previously gotten about the school, confirm some of it, add to it. And we've done that as part of our research and study of the other two reports. And then provide a different optic, maybe than we've heard in the past about what's going on in your school from a facility standpoint.
I think long range.
Is there a proposal? Is that something that we're supposed to have? Because I don't have that.
This was on the board book.
Oh, that was.
Yeah, it was on the board book.
Because Christine was just asking me about the cost for the fee for the proposal, and I didn't see that in.
36.
Yesterday.
Oh, in a separate email.
Yes, I
No.
attached it to the board book, and then sent an email to all of you that had been updated.
Because the agreement was worked on between Craig and Terry Hedges. Actually,
Right.
James Levy, I believe, did it.
Yep. Okay.
Now,
So an email went out saying it had been attached to board book.
one thing to keep in mind, last time I was here, there was a conversation kind of going back and forth with regards to our service agreement. We have a standard service agreement with the district. This is an exhibit that would be attached to it that we worked out with your attorney so that the two mesh well.
I have that.
It outlines not only the scope of services that we're providing as part of this study, but again, the cost, the time frames, and then all of which, if needs to be adjusted, moving forward, we're open to that.
The other piece is we bring this to you because this was not in the budget this year. We're assuming that this is part of what comes from the reserves. So what we'll wind up having to do with the budget is do a budget amendment in the spring for this because this is part of the whole process.
And the total amount we're talking about is $36,700.
Yes, for this part of the study.
Plus expenses.
Plus expenses.
And that does not include, we're not voting tonight on the life safety study, which
Right,
is a
that was-
$10,000,
It was under 10.
under $10,000 fee.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any questions?
So,
before? Yeah, go ahead.
At the end of this process, what that we're voting on today, this proposed here, what's the deliverable? What do we have in our hands?
There will be a report that I will be coming back to and presenting to you. On a PowerPoint, I have a handout. It will outline areas of potential improvement or consideration for improvement at the school. We'll also look at costs associated with those, budget ranges, as well as potential timeframes for implementation of those.
So how does that differ from what we've looked at from, I think, the LLD a year or so ago?
They're putting it all together. They're taking out the two studies that we did, the second study being kind of a second opinion. They're taking those two and combining now the community engagement to make the recommendations prioritized because the board had directed me to come back, now come back with priorities. So they're going to be prioritized based on the community engagement group. And then the board will determine which renovations you'd like to do based upon their recommendation and what the cost of those are.
And as I recall, we at least had
associated, again, going back to the BLLD?
That was Plant Moran, had the cost center.
Okay.
Just
But you
suggest
said you would do some estimate of cost, correct?
That is correct. We have an estimating department in-house that interfaces with our design team for any of these kinds of reports.
I mean, I have no idea what is the cost of such report. I mean, this is where I'm a little in the weeds, so to speak. You know, it's difficult for me to quantify, to address the cost based on a scope of, I mean, I understand the scope of work, but I cannot quantify it very well, which, you know.
This is the step that we need to take.
I
before
understand
the
that
drawings
entirely.
come.
What I'm saying is that, is it a good deal, is it a bad deal? I cannot assess this in any way.
According to our attorneys, this is right in line with what they see every day for this from many different architects. Because they actually worked on the agreement with White with us. So.
Yeah, so there's not, you know.
So phase 1, startup activities, phase 2, public engagement process, and that began, and you're having some additional workshops, site visits, etc. And then phase 3, planning.
And that's that's scenarios. It's part of community engagement as well as refining scenarios.
Where do the teachers come into play?
They're already involved.
Oh, they're already involved.
There was actually a number of staff and administrators at the community meeting, which was nice to see.
Everybody's involved in it, so it's really a synthesis of the 2 previous studies, and then adding the community engagement piece to get to the prioritization that you're looking for.
What Dr. Sophie and I haven't discussed yet is the opportunity of engaging students also in the process, and that's something that we'll figure out after the first of the year.
So the report that we would be looking at, say, spring, spring of 2015, sounds like summer, would it not include, obviously, things like detailed blueprints, but would we be looking at sketches?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We'll call them conceptual sketches, but they'll be a little bit more detailed than that, and they'll be based on a lot more factual information than we're typically able to glean during this kind of process. And part of that is because we will at that point have gone through the school to do your 10-year life safety survey.
I see.
And then you have a little bit more detailed information than we're typically used to seeing at this point.
That the other people that have done studies didn't have.
Okay. So I guess that ultimately answers my question as to what, right? We have at least conceptual drawings about which we can at least move forward with the ideas about what kind of trade-offs we have to assess and how we might prioritize these things.
And the prioritization is really the community engagement committee will present their viewpoint of prioritization as was requested by the board, and then the board will have to make the final decisions on, what, say for instance, there's 8 choices, you may choose 4 of them, and then it's going to be it's a long process. You have to determine, you have to get the distinct plans all done, you have to determine what you're going to get done the first year, if we're going to break it up. There's a plan for all that. But you can't do anything until you really have the recommendations and kind of the priorities of what we're really looking at. And that's what we'll be bringing back to you.
I think it's just one thing to prioritize, to misuse the word or overuse the word conceptually or abstractly, like Trevor said. It's one thing. It's one thing to prioritize abstractly, and quite another when you're looking at something concrete. And to me, those conceptual drawings bring us a step closer to the concrete. So
very close. Yes.
It's a process. It happens gradually over time. And just giving a presentation based on our recommendations. It might be that there's some things you agree with, some things you don't, some things you'd like to have changed, and certainly that's all part of the process too. It's not just a one shot, here it is. You know, what do you think? It's really kind of an iterative process.
Yes.
I screwed up.
Also, you do have a board rep. Leanne sits on the committee for you. She was not able to attend this meeting, but she will be here for the site visit, so she will be able to report out also then.
Does that clear
Yes.
five things for you?
I received great feedback from the people that attended the meeting. So we really got some interesting feedback and some interesting thoughts. It was a diverse group too. So, any other questions?
This is the web survey. Actually, okay. Does anybody have any other questions they need answered before we move for a motion? We ask for a motion.
And what exactly will the motion be?
Motion is going to be to approve White Services fee proposal for phase 1 of the renovation process at Lake Bluff Middle School in the amount of $36,700. So it's to get phase 1 going.
It's 36 for the rec costs of another 7 or something, I recommend.
Possible for.
Well, and the 36 is the whole, it's phases 1 through 3, right?
Right. It's for all of them.
Okay. I thought
Oh,
it sounded like you were
yes.
saying for phase 1.
That's the
No,
way
it's
the motion
the whole
was
thing.
worded for me. Okay, so I'm confused now. This is not clear to me today at all. It says phase 1.
So that's. I don't have the agreement. Do you have the agreement in front of you?
Yeah.
It's the very top part. It's referred to as phase 1 in the document.
Comment. No, phase
Well,
1,
commence
phase
will
2.
phase
Commence
two.
was phase 1, phase 2,
Phase
phase 3.
You've got to add all of them.
As
all
outlined.
phases.
Right.
It's for everything that's in the document.
It's
Phase
phase
1
1
through
through 3.
So basically,
So I'm
what
going to change this to
You just,
Yes.
phase 1, 2, and 3.
just you can refer to date of the
or the
agreement.
document too.
And as,
That's-
you know,
that's probably
and
right.
that's it.
In the proposal,
Dated.
December
If
3rd.
if they're recommending an additional 7,500 for potential direct costs, should we include that in the motion since we're going to probably have to do a budget amendment later? Well, what for all of
Not to exceed, you want to do it not to exceed?
From what I understand, what we're actually doing is moving to approve this project identification document. We're moving to approve, that would include the expenses and the 36 and the phases 1 through 3, and that should be the motion.
Right.
So what do you want to call it? You called it project development document.
Project identification document.
The title of the document is Project Identification Document, Educational Alignment Study for Lake Bluff Middle School.
That's it.
That's really what you're approving.
And the date.
And the date, dated December 3rd.
project. Okay, so motion to approve the White Services project.
Do you want to bring that up, Jerry, please? I pulled the wrong one. I pulled the other one.
And I've never seen this, so identification document.
I like that because then it takes.
While they're working through this, can I ask a couple of additional questions? So once this step is taken, just take me through the next phase. So we approved this, we paid $40,000 or whatever with all-in costs for this, then what do? So let's say we have our priorities in front of us and we say there's 8 different things we could do and we're voting to achieve 2 next year and 2 the following year. We identify the projects that we're going to undertake. What's the next step? Like I am trying to figure out how far we've gotten toward getting those projects done, or are we back in a study phase? Are we at blueprint phase? Where
At that point, you're out of the study phase, really into the project phase, I guess, if you will. What you're going to be getting as a deliverable would be some type of recommended expansion renovation projects at the school. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
With a potential budget range and an implementation schedule, I guess, if you will. It might be phased. We don't have any idea because it's not done yet at all. But there might be a phased implementation plan. It might be an all or nothing or all in one type, and with dollars associated with that.
Yes.
And then it would be up to the Board of Education to make a decision based on resources that you have available and desires that you have, how you want to enact those recommended changes.
So the specificity that you'd be providing in this report, it would be sufficient for us to draw budgets on? I mean, I'm trying to understand if we would have another level of investigation that we would need to go into before we could budget for the following year for the projects, or are we getting budget quality estimates out of this report? I'm trying to understand how precise they'll be at this point.
Okay, so they're not going to be exact because we don't know all the details of everything that's going to go into the any kind of renovation or expansion project. But the reason why we would give ranges,
yeah,
is those could be anticipated costs, I guess, if you will. That will allow you to go into the next phase, which would be sort of internally planning on how you want to enact what we talk about and recommend in the report.
Can you give us a sense, because I understand ranges, but can you give us like a margin of error? that would help.
The budget ranges that I give you typically,
yeah.
Typically what we do is we put them in a 10% range.
Okay.
All
right.
We don't really know what's going on in the market at what time, or when you want to implement them for that matter.
Right.
We can make a recommendation, say, let's do phase 1 next year, and you might have other plans or other things that you want to do as far as resources, expenditures, and so forth. So it might get deferred a year or two. And when you do that, of course, there's inflation that goes along with those numbers, and we have to revisit the cost, and we continually revisit the cost, even during the course of any kind of next steps, if you will. Those next steps would involve going into a deeper level of design, conversation with the staff. There are some additional surveys and other information that we glean. It's called due diligence. We take soil samples. We have our engineers go through and assess your infrastructure in more detail, and that all goes into our planning and ultimately the construction documents that we provide for those improvements. That goes out for public bidding.
The other thing that I think would be useful in that report is if it's not just a simple priority, but I would assume that some remodeling involved, one cannot do A without doing B, and that has to be clearly specified.
Absolutely.
So we cannot just cherry pick and say, well, we want to do this, but then it's going to cost us extra money to do, C 3 years down the road because we were not smart enough to do it at the same time as doing A. I think that is really a critical piece for
That's an excellent point. No, that's an excellent point, and that's actually part of the conversation that we would have with you before kind of memorializing all of our findings.
Because I think everything has a domino effect in here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like for those of us that have built homes or renovated their houses, it's the same process. The architect takes a look at what you want done. He submits it to you. You study it. You make a few changes here.
He ballparks.
It comes back again.
You had 25%.
Well, you nail it down, but it sounds like the process is fairly similar.
Right. It is.
In a microcosm type way.
The difference between that and doing a house is that it's really more by committee. There's far more people involved, and that's why we do the community engagement. That's why we come to you and get you involved and ask your opinion. The stewards of the district.
And that's a really, really important piece that I hear a lot about from the elementary school. Mm-hmm. So I think that community piece is critical in this whole middle school project.
How are we doing? I think we've got the motion worked out. You guys ready?
Go for it.
Go for it.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the Life Services fee proposal as outlined in the project identification document, Educational Alignment Study for Lake Bluff Middle School, dated December 3rd, 2014, in the amount of $36,700 and up to $7,500 in direct costs.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Christine.
Mark Bear,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Hay,
No.
Kristen Letchinger, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Motion's approved. I apologize for the confusion on the motion, guys. 10B, saying thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
The next thing on the agenda, as we had, is the auditor. Next thing on the agenda is going back to when we had our audit done. We had shared that we would be hiring a new auditor. We will be recommending Baker Tilly, and we have our spokesperson, Nick Cavallari, who just would like to introduce himself to you and talk a little bit more about what you will get in an audit through his company.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I know you just finished your audits, and now we're here talking about next year's audits. But I wanted to bring a few things to the board, just to share a little bit about my firm and what we do and how we specialize in servicing K-12 school districts and joint agreements in the state of Illinois. There's a little placemat that we call that we like to leave behind when we come to talk to prospective clients. It just kind of sets the tone about what it is that we do at the firm. Just to recap very briefly, I don't want to take too much time up, but we service about 55 K-12 school districts or joint agreements in the state for audit services. We're actually the second largest provider of audit services in the state. There's one firm in the middle of the state that does about 65. And they're only issuing what the regulatory reports, which is the annual financial report that's required under the state law. We actually issue more of the what they call comprehensive annual financial reports, or CAFRs is one of the acronyms. So we do more GAAP basis financial statements than any other firm in the state. Well, what does that mean? Well, there's two different bases of accounting that generally you engage your audit firm to opine on. One is your annual financial report, which is a regulatory pre-printed form that has to be completed by every school district in the state. And then there's also another, what they call a GAAP basis set of financial statements, which is on a totally different basis of accounting as far as presentation and how some of the information is presented. What I wanted to leave behind for the board to look at is an example report of what we actually deliver if you were to engage us. Now, this particular client is a CAFR. Your school district right now is not a CAFR, but the basis of the accounting is the same. So the way the accruals are accounted for at the end of the year, CAFR is generally a little bit more data that goes into the financial statements. It'll include an introductory section that kind of talks a little bit more about the future of where the district is going on a financial or an educational standpoint. And there's more historical information that's presented in statistical tables. But outside of that, it's really the same amount of information. What our firm does is, because we do so many K-12 schools, we understand how you operate your budget. You operate on your education fund, your operations and maintenance fund. So what we actually do is we present all your funds as major on the basic financial statements. So one of the things that I like about how our reports present is, if you were to look at page 16 and 17, very briefly, I just want to point this out. To me, at a glance, if you were to open your financial statements, right here you could see the whole story of your financial information at a glance. You have your funds as columns, you have your income statement, revenues, expenditures, other financing sources and uses, what was the change for the year, what did you start with at the year, and then where did you end off at. What we like to do is present all the individual funds as major so that you can see that information at a glance. We also present every individual schedule in the back with budget to actual comparisons as well. So you can see what you approved at your budgetary level and what was the actual result. So, sure.
I say sold.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I like this.
I do want to say, you may be wondering, why are we doing this now after just having one? Jay has to prepare our accounts to even turn it over to an auditor. So it's important we know now, so that Jay can do things the way he needs to do them before the audit.
Right.
To prepare.
Well, you're going to steal my thunder. You just said sold. I think what sets us apart is that we're a dedicated services firm just to K-12 schools. I started with the firm about 9 years ago. It was actually a small boutique kind of firm. It was called William F. Curry, and we were based out of Oak Brook. And there was about 4 partners, 3 partners and about 30 or so professionals there. And within about a year after I started working, they merged into a larger firm, which was based out of Wisconsin, called Birchall Krause. Birchall Krause has since changed their name to Baker Tilly, and we're more of a national presence at this stage. We're the 12th largest public accounting firm in the nation. So we have about 2,500 business professionals. What sets us apart is our niche in state and local governmental accounting. We have about, I think our pamphlet says about 220 business professionals that just do governmental accounting, which is really niche. We don't do taxes, I don't do manufacturing, I don't do anything else but K through 12 schools. So I kind of serve a dual role in my firm. I'll do audit work, but then I also do consulting work. So if school districts are transitioning accounting systems, if they have a high level of transition in their business office, they need some triage services because the ship has kind of sailed a little too far and things haven't been done properly, I can kind of come in and help as well. That's not what I'm pitching here today, but to just kind of talk about that. I'm not pitching that, of course, but I'm here just to talk a little bit about the breadth of the services that we provide. Your school district is not very large in the grand scheme of things from the standpoint of all school districts throughout the state, but I don't think that you're small enough that you wouldn't get the personal level of attention that I provide all my clients. I have clients that have $3 to $4 million operating budgets because they're one building high school districts or elementary school districts. So we service our clients all the same, either if you have a $200 million budget or if you have a $10 million budget.
Questions?
How does this fee compare to what we were paying in the past?
It's about 10.
We paid about $10,000 for our last audit, but I guess in comparison to what we get, I think it's valuable. This is actually in line with what I've paid in previous districts. Just as an example, our auditors were out at our facilities for 3 days, 2.5 days this last audit. I would expect 1 to 2 weeks with this firm because they'll be looking at a lot more. They'll be meeting with the board and looking a lot more in depth at our controls and our processes. And then also doing more testing and things and looking at our books more thoroughly. So that I think the service is commensurate with the cost, and the cost is in line with what I've seen in other districts for this type of
as a board member, just a note, when I read an audit, I mean, I'm a geek, I read audits.
We like that.
What I found the most useful for non-geeky people is, the letter transmittal at the beginning. So I sort of looked at the one for Blanco and I thought, with due respect, it was a bit lame. So I would like, I would like to see more details. Things that really highlight the issues that are faced by the district, whether it's age of the building, need for renovation, tax base, basic state regulation, unfunded mandate, all of this, because I think that it's useful not only for us board members, but it's also useful for the community. And that's the kind of document that is easy to read for parents and community, and taxpayers.
One of the things that we would provide to the administration is if you were to grab the tab that's titled MD&A and open it up, this is a management's discussion and analysis section, which is an area where the management has an opportunity to talk about what actually transpired. What do the numbers mean, per se? This is a template that we would provide to the administration, and we would assist, in trying to help understand some of the numbers if they had some questions, because some of the accruals we may assist in calculating, not necessarily 100% sure at that point yet. But, this is a liftable document, in my opinion. You should be able to hand this to a community member and say, this is what happened during the year. To just recap a little bit about what our audit approach would be, because I really didn't talk about that much. But what we would be doing would be providing an opinion on the basic financial statements, okay? And that's in all material respects with the basis of accounting that's generally accepted accounting principles, okay? We would also be preparing the annual financial report that would be filed with the state. Currently, right now, the district doesn't receive enough federal funding that would require what they call an A133 single audit. So that's not necessarily something that you would need at this point in time. I don't think you probably will be needing it anytime soon because those thresholds are going to be changing within the next year or so. We would also be providing a report over your internal control over financial reporting, which is kind of called a yellow book opinion. The yellow book was a book that was yellow that at one point in time that talked about all the governmental rules. And what that does is, for the purposes of, I guess, auditing your records, the auditor is required to gain an understanding of your internal controls over the preparation of the financial statements. Okay? So what are those controls that we look at? Well, we typically look at 5 areas of controls. We'll look at the entity-wide controls, so kind of the tone at the top. We'll look at your accounts payable process. We'll look at your payroll process. We'll look at your treasury function. So how are you closing the monthly records? How are you reconciling the books back to bank? We'll also look at the types of investments that you're holding. And then we'll also look at the IT environment. So what are your controls over the information? How is that safeguarded, backups, and making sure that patches are applied appropriately and things of that nature. So we look at all those areas. We do walkthroughs. We document those processes. And we tend to look to see what controls are in place and if they're operating. If we identify any risks, we're required to communicate those to the governing body and to management. But we don't actually provide an opinion on the design or the operational effectiveness of your internal controls. We're not engaged to perform an internal audit over your controls. We're here to provide an opinion on your financial statements. But if we were to identify a risk, we're required to communicate those to you. Okay? So we have a little bit more, I think, probably a little bit more of a conservative approach. We're a little bit more robust on how we do that process, I think, based on what I've seen in the industry. We spend probably no less than a week on interim audit procedures, which is on-site before the books are closed, really documenting and getting understanding of your processes so that we can design our audit approach to make sure that if we render opinion, we're right. We haven't made a mistake and there's an error in your financial statements. So after our interim procedures will take place, we'll typically come back after the books are closed, and I would imagine at this stage we probably wouldn't be here any less than 2 weeks the first year. Absolutely, no less than 2 weeks.
And don't you interview board members as part of the process?
It's actually an audit requirement. We're required to have an open line of communication with the governing body. We would solicit feedback from a designated board member, or in some cases I've actually solicited feedback from every board member. It really depends on the level of comfort that the board has. Typically what we're asking for is, what are you concerned about? What keeps you up at night? Do you have any inside information that I should know about? Because I'm rendering an opinion on the financial statements. If you know about a potential fraud or anything of significant concern, I want to know about that so that I can adjust my audit approach and make sure that either, well, maybe you were right or maybe you were wrong. It's really important that we have an opening dialogue. I like to, my clients call me all year round. I'm not just here for 2 weeks and then I'm gone. They call me all year round. You're getting ready to book a transfer. You have a question about the legality of something. I may not be able to render a legal opinion, but I can kind of reference you to something that may be of use. Things like what you're ongoing right now, this dialogue that I just sat through regarding, planning for a large project potentially. How are you going to track it if it does go, to make sure that it's accounted for correctly in the records. I provide templates to my clients and assist all year round. They're not just buying an audit, they're buying, in my opinion, a partnership with the firm. If things come about and you need additional assistance, we can help out.
Seems like a very different approach than we're used to.
What was in the budget for audit? Just
for this year, we budgeted what we expected,
okay.
So the 10,000. But this would be for next year's audit, so we budgeted properly.
No, I realize this, but we budgeted, and so basically we're 16 grand short, correct? Am I understanding this?
No, we paid for this year for the audit of the 14 financials. Next year, in next year's budget, we would pay for the audit of the 15 financials. So
what was the amount that was budgeted for this audit, next year's audit?
That's in next year's budget.
Next year's budget, yeah.
Because it's after the end of the budget year, so it has to be in the
Oh, never mind. Yes, forget it.
And then also just to your question about the MD&A, that's really I think we had a discussion about this when we presented the audit. That's really the management discussion and analysis. So whatever we want, if we want to make it more robust, that's something that we can do internally. And what the firm would provide is more an opinion on the accounting and the validity of our numbers.
One of the options to your point is, we can but provide a draft set of financial statements.
I don't want to bill it in the form it's getting late. I mean, I get it. You know what I'm saying?
Fair enough.
No problem.
I see that the engagement letter is for 2 years, fiscal year 15 and 16. Is that typical?
Yeah.
Okay.
Between 1 and 3 or 4 years, many districts like to change their auditors at some frequency,
5, 6 years.
Every 5 or 6 years. But it takes a year really to get things going. So you want to have at least 2 to hit steady state and get experience.
Okay, makes sense.
Anybody?
Motion.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve a 2-year engagement agreement with Baker Tilly to perform the district audit for 2015 and 2016 in the amount of $26,000 and $26,500 respectively?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Kristen Fletcher, yes. Jennifer Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes,
Ian Charlotte.
Yes.
the motion is approved. Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
All right, moving on. 10C, certification of the 2014-2015 tax levy. Mr. Khan has summarized for us.
More.
Discussion held by the board of this matter, and is there any further discussion any of the board wishes to engage in on this?
Go over it one more time.
So if nobody opposes, I will move right to a motion. May I have, is that okay? I may have a motion to approve the 2014-2015 certificate of tax levy in the amount of $14,228,250 for Lake Bluff Elementary School District 65 with specific fund account levies itemized on the attached certificate.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Chris Fletcher, yes. Jennifer Rosen.
Yes.
Kristen Ryder. Mark Berry. Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Ian Charlotte.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Motion is approved. We have a levy. Great. 10D, approval of resolution authorizing participation in the Illinois School District Liquid Asset Fund. Jean and or Jay, do you please brief us on that?
This is really a reauthorization. We currently participate in the fund. This is our primary investment fund, and we just need to renew the resolution because the resolution they had on file was an old resolution with people who are no longer at the district.
And this is a procedural thing we do every year.
This is, yeah, it should be done every year. I don't think it was done in the...
It should be done every year.
And there are no options to not do it.
We could withdraw all of our money from it and put it in a mattress, but...
Okay. Not what we want to do, so let's, anybody else have any other questions?
Probably earn a little more.
No, it might not be so bad.
May I have a motion to approve the resolution for authorizing participation in the Illinois School District Liquid Asset Fund?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Chris Fletcher, yes. Jennifer Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Ian Charlotte.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved.
Who did the motion?
I did. Susan seconded.
10E, approval of banking resolution. Jay, I assume it would be Jay who would summarize for us. We've had this conversation for a while now, but if you just...
Yes, this was just the proposal to consolidate our bank accounts into one bank to reduce the number of accounts and add some fraud protection services. So these are the resolutions to affect those changes that we discussed at the last meeting.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right. May I have a motion to approve the banking resolution for Lake Forest Bank and Trust as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Ian Charlotte.
Yes.
Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Hay.
Yes.
Chris Fletcher, yes.
Motion is approved.
Who was the second?
10F.
Susan.
Who was the second?
I think it
Who
was
was the
John.
second one?
No, I moved.
Oh, I second.
10F. Approval of the...
You seconded the last one. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
You're losing it. Okay.
Approval of the E-rate agreement. Jean, can you please summarize that for us?
I'm going to have Jay talk about that one too.
Well, you've read the proposal. If you briefly, E-rate is a federal program that provides money for technology to schools and libraries. It's paid for with the line on your phone bill that says universal service charge at the end. And it's a fairly complicated program that it's very difficult to manage, and most school districts get help with it from experts who just do this. And it's a way I anticipate it will maximize our revenue, actually be revenue positive for the district because the services are paid for as a percentage of.
It was very difficult for me to reading the material, figure out what the hell it was about. You know what I'm saying?
They take a percentage of whatever we gain.
Right, I mean, the savings, correct?
And this is a reputable firm that
Okay.
many other school districts use, and I've had.
And we just haven't done this in the past at all, is that?
That's correct.
Okay.
So who found this?
Well, most districts do
have
it
been doing it.
because it's based on your reimbursement's based on the level of low-income students in your district, and ours is increasing. We actually stand to gain more money than many other of our comparable districts.
And that'll
We have been filing for it in the past, and I think we were getting Single Path was helping us with it, but the level of service we were getting was what we were paying for. So we were just filing to get something. I think it was in the order of $20,000 or $30,000. This firm would go out and try to maximize our money according to the rules, and would help us with our technology plan and determine what of the things we need to buy, what we could get E-rate reimbursement for. So actually, with the new construction at the middle school, is also kind of timely because they do a lot of work with technology funding for new construction. So if there's opportunity to get some of this paid for with federal grants, then they can help us with that.
Okay. I take the recommendation that we enter into an agreement with them. My only little nit would be that this contract can only be terminated once a year. I don't know if that's something that we can go back and say we'd like to be able to terminate it at any time. We don't anticipate problems based on the arrangement views as you've
We
described
did not
it.
have this run by Hodges because
No,
it's
we
a
did.
stand. Oh, did we?
Yeah, because actually the amendment is, if you look at it, there's the original contract, and then there's an amendment to it, which was drafted
I
by
did see
Hodges.
that. Who reviewed that at Hodges? James.
James.
Okay. All right, then I feel better right there.
Yeah, I thought that we could cancel with notice, but it's kind of renews year to year. I think the way that it was written initially was that it would automatically renew, and we changed that to we have to renew it annually.
It's actually
In the amendment, in the addendum, which was what Hodges.
Which is what Hodges put together for us.
in number 5.
Thank you.
Page 1 of the addendum.
I just have
Okay, there it is. That's what I was looking for. Good,
I
thank
just
you.
have a quick suggestion. It would be helpful for us when you guys do something like this, that we get like a cover page with an outline of what the thing the organization is about, the benefits to be derived from joining the organization, the key points of the contract, renewal terms and so on and so forth, and then attach the entire document, like a cover page. I mean, that would be really helpful to me because I was reading this thing and I was struggling. I'm like,
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that as a rule, you could do this,
Be good.
and we can talk it offline about this.
Save time for you
So,
too.
like an agenda cover item.
Just for
summarizing
my clarification, the board memo was not with the services. You're looking for something in addition to that.
Yeah, because what you guys assume is that we know a great deal more than we do, which is really a dangerous assumption.
Right, but you do read, because a lot of it's in the board memo.
I thought I did have a cover sheet with her.
I didn't get it.
Was the board memo in the board packet?
Yes.
I got the
So I know it's a board memo.
Well,
I haven't seen that.
there's the board memo that you can download from.
You know what, we can email you the board memo,
Yes.
It's part of the.
but you should have had it in your board packet.
No, in my board package, I had like 2 copies of this.
Okay.
And then summary of services is right behind that.
Okay, so you would need it to be emailed to you to be able to see it?
Yeah, I mean,
We could do that.
yeah, that would be helpful. I have a firewall at work, and I cannot fix it. So
Oh, I know,
the
we
stuff
did
in
get
the
it.
board package, the board book, does not download all the time. And I work with my IT guys, and they cannot figure it out.
Why does it
Do you
appear
see
as
it?
something you have to download instead of something that can just come up the way the rest of the board stuff does?
'cause that's the way it is on my system.
Are you getting the hard copy?
And when I got the hard copy, I got 2 copies of this. You know what I'm saying? And I'll show you. I mean, I'll show you again.
We're gonna have to work through the logistics.
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to the motion at hand. And may I have a motion to approve the E-rate agreement with New Hope Foundation to provide consulting services on a percentage of program revenue basis as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Susan Wright,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Judy Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Chris Letchinger, yes, John Rosen.
Yes.
The motion is approved. We will address the logistics of this.
Yeah,
That's-
later on.
Item 10G, approval of attorney of record. There is extensive detail about this in your board memo, which maybe you didn't get, but it does go over the basics here. And I would like Jean to give us the synopsis of what's going on, why we're doing this.
Items G and H, because we can really get, while they'll have to be separate motions, I'm gonna summarize both of them right now. Basically, items G and H memorialize the current relationships we have with both Hodges and Louisi as the law firm that we use for almost everything, and Terry Engler, who does our special education law. For a variety of reasons, one being Terry Engler being in a new firm now, there is a reason that we really need to memorialize at this point. So all you're doing in G&H is memorializing and really putting through board approval Hodges and Louisi as our attorney of record, and approving in item H, Terry Engler as our attorney for special education.
Can we combine the motion?
We need them separate for a reason, so.
Does anybody have any questions on either one of those?
No.
Okay, item 10G, approval of attorney of record. May I have a motion to approve the law firm of Hodges, Louisi, Eisenhammer, Rodick, and Cohn, LLP as attorney of record for Lake Bluff Elementary School District 65?
So moved.
Second?
A roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Judy Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Chris Letchinger, yes, John Rosen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Moving right along to 10H, approval of Terry Engler, attorney for special education. May I have a motion to approve Terry E. Engler, Cynthia M. Baston, and Alan T. Schraga, Engler, Baston, and Schraga as legal counsel for special education and other related matters for Lake Bluff Elementary School District 65?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlotte,
Yes.
Judy Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Chris Letchinger, yes, John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes, motion is passed. Okay, 10H, approval of policy 2:260 uniform grievance procedure. And I believe the only changes to this had to do with adding, changing some names. In
Yes.
there, correct?
So it's a second read.
Do our policy committee people have any comment or wish to say anything at this point?
Just substantively, I understand this is the name change, and looking at it though, it's a very rigid policy. And at some point in time, not tonight, I don't know if we have
Bring it back.
flexibility to address that, but I'd like to see it brought back, yes.
Do we move forward with the
Yes.
approval tonight? Anybody else have any questions? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the adoption of policy 2:260 uniform grievance procedure as presented by the administration for second read?
Yes, so moved.
Second, okay, roll call vote, please.
Judy Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Christina Letchinger, yes, John Rosen.
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Okay, moving right along. Item 10J, personnel report. This is a motion to approve the personnel report for December as presented by the administration. It includes Family Medical Leave Act for Nancy Bachrath, who's a technology specialist for the district effective December 15th, 2014 through February 2nd, 2015. And a leave of absence for Jacqueline Rote, first grade teacher at the elementary school, effective December 19th, 2014. Through the end of the school year, per board policy 5:250, leave of absence without pay. So may I have that motion to approve the personnel report for December as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Somebody?
Okay.
Roll call vote,
First
please.
was Suzanne, second was Leanne. Okay. Richard Haig,
Yes.
Chris Fletchinger, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
Ian Charlo,
Yes.
Julie Gotcha.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item 10K, approval of consent agenda. Today's consent agenda will include closed session minutes from November 18th, 2014, regular Board of Ed minutes from November 18th, 2014, closed session minutes from December 2nd, 2014, the P card report, the bills payable report, and the December's treasurer report. Before we go on, would anybody like to have any of these items removed from the consent agenda?
No.
So, may I have a motion to approve the consent
Don't
agenda?
dare.
May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for December 16th, 2014, as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Chris Fletchinger, yes. John Rosen,
Yes.
Susan Ryder,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo,
Yes.
Judy Gotcha,
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Motion is approved. That's the end of our action items. Moving on to item 11, FOIA requests. We've had 3 FOIA requests received by the district. One from North Shore Business Technologies, request for contracts pertaining to copiers, facsimiles, and printers. We had a FOIA from Janet L. Martin requesting detailed information regarding non-certified employees. And one from Dr. Vincent Miles requesting closing records for each debt issuance of the district from 1984 to the present. That's a lot of work.
That one, our attorney, like many of the others in Lake County, wrote us an objection letter.
Yeah.
And that is in your files.
Any questions about the FOIAs? Comments? Item 12, public comments. Does anybody like to address the board? Not seeing any, we'll move right along. Item 13, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Ed meeting for December 6, 2014 at 8:58 p.m. First and a second. All in favor of adjourning at 8:58, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We are adjourned.
Nobody can leave though. Yeah.